Her name is Joanna Bar. She's the CEO and co-founder of Traceless Materials, a circular bioeconomy startup offering a sustainable alternative material to conventional bioplastics. In her presentation, she will talk about sustainability-related innovation in times of Corona. Hi, Joanna. Hi.
Hi, thanks a lot for having me. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the introduction. Let me quickly share my screen.
Yes.
I hope this works now, and please let me know if you can see.
Yes, I can see.
Perfect.
Perfect. Okay, I will let you do the presentation and remind everybody that they can ask questions in the live chat, and we will be able to answer with Joanna at the end of her presentation.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Elena. So my topic of today is winners or losers, sustainable innovations in times of COVID-19. But before we jump in, maybe quickly present myself. My name is Johanna Bare. A little bit about my background. I was a consultant for strategy consulting for most of my career, 6 years. At the Business Innovation Consulting Group, growing the German market for the consulting group, and growing at the same time I guess one could say a consulting startup from 12 to 100 employees. I then did my MBA at IE Business School and decided that I needed a change. So I joined the Panion, a social impact startup in Malmö, Sweden, and social networking startup, basically a Tinder for friendship, bringing people together, creating new friendships. And yeah, as I said, Panion was a social impact startup trying to really improve people's lives and have a positive impact on mental health and well-being. And while what they're doing is amazing, unfortunately, the beginning of this year when COVID hit, the startup was quite affected and not able to raise the money as foreseen. So there is the first impact on sustainable and so impact startups right there. And afterwards, I then joined and founded together with my co-founder, Dr. Anne Lamp, Traceless Materials Designed for Nature. And as Elena rightfully said, so a sustainable alternative to conventional plastics and bioplastics. And with Traceless, we are now obviously operating in the COVID era as well. So I would like to tell you a little bit about first the impact of COVID on startups, on sustainable innovations, and then tell you a little bit about how we tackle the problems that COVID is also fostering. So you have all seen, for example, the masks that we are all using these days more and more, laying around in the open, in the environment, because COVID is having a substantial impact on the pollution by single-use plastics. In Wuhan, where COVID started, they have in the high times had 6 times more daily medical waste, single-use medical waste, such as face masks, gloves, and gowns per day than before the pandemic. And in comparison, in Thailand, plastic waste went up from 1,500 tons to 6,300 tons per day, mainly through food delivery waste. In the UK, illegal waste disposal has risen by 300% during the pandemic, and globally, there is an estimate that we use 129 billion face masks and 65 billion gloves every month. So as you can imagine, the plastic pollution is really becoming an even bigger problem during COVID, and that fact that the petroleum demand has collapsed and the prices for virgin plastics therefore plummeted, making them much cheaper than recyclates. These cost incentives, together with the lifestyle changes that we have to have during COVID, obviously make overcoming the plastic pollution even harder these days. But before we jump into a potential solution for this, let's have a look at other followings from COVID. So as you might have heard, during the lockdown, we had a dramatic drop in greenhouse gas emissions of over 5%, some estimate, so due to lower production levels, less airflow, which is great for our environment. At the same time, the public awareness for sustainability topics has been rising. There is much more debates, or there's many debates on the positive effects of the lockdown on our environment, but also much more awareness for the importance of green spaces, for example, local green spaces in our environment. So this might strengthen the public support for sustainable innovations and might help us to transition to a more sustainable economic system in general. This might bring a lot of momentum and opportunities for startups in the B2C sector wanting to implement and bring to market innovations, sustainable innovations directly directed to consumers. But companies are also much more aware of their sustainability actions. Maybe it is counterintuitive to some, but since they have to rethink their ways and have to find new ways and adopt their practices, a lot of companies are now overthinking their sustainability practices due to both also their customer, but also public demand, creating new opportunities again for startups and innovation leaders in the B2B sector. But not only consumers and companies are rethinking their sustainability strategies. A lot of the recovery packages after COVID are actually declared to be green recovery packages. Government support calling for a balance for rethinking and for supporting especially green recovery measurements. The OECD estimates the overall amount of these green recovery packages to over 300 billion US dollars in grants, loans, and tax reliefs. So that is quite a lot of money. Unfortunately, the balance to non-green spending is still unfavorable. So despite that being a lot of money, there is still a lot more money put in non-sustainable recovery packages. And there's also a number of governments using the COVID measures as an explanation and using them to roll back on existing environmental regulations and taxes, increasing again the fossil fuel intensive infrastructure. When it comes to startup finance, and I already mentioned that in the beginning, that the startup I worked for priorly was quite hit hard by this circumstance. There is a huge inertia about how COVID will affect both the startups business, but also in general business and economic environment, the economic environment. And that is the challenge that all startups are facing these days. Both through distributed supply chain, changes in the way people have to work, home office, big topic, but also in the relation to their investors. We have heard of pulled term sheets, we have heard of postponed decision makings. In Europe, the investments have slowed down, but they haven't come to a stop. And actually, there's some top tech investors that just now added sustainability clauses to their deal terms. So also thinking about innovation, sustainable innovation, and supporting these more. On the other hand, in the US, a lot of investors say sustainability will become secondary. So I think there's really a cultural difference as well between US investors who are less likely to see sustainability as a political issue, but rather a scientific one. I just got the newest Pittsburgh newsletter today, actually titling Fund Downs Decline, Secondary Surge as COVID Reshapes Private Fundraising. So yes, this book chapter is still not closed. We will see how that actually turns out. And I think that is exactly describing the situation that we are in right now when it comes to sustainable innovations and startups in the sustainable environment. We really stand at a crossroads right now, and sustainable development is not a new term at all. It's been around for over 3 decades, mainly used in scientific conferences, in academic lecture halls, So this crisis really is also a chance to bring sustainability, sustainable innovations back to the forefront, but this is depending on us, on entrepreneurs, to really have guts and bring new innovations, sustainable innovations to the market now. And that is exactly what we're trying to do with Traceless. I talked earlier about the plastic problem that we are trying to solve with our novel material, because 85% of all plastics that have ever been produced are still in the environment. They are in our landfills or swimming in our oceans. And that is because 0% of the plastic materials that are currently on the market are actually degradable in the environment. They just don't go away. And some of you a little more familiar with the topic might know this grid on the further left down side of this slide. That is the typical grid in which we put plastics and bioplastics these days, differentiating between whether they're fossil-based or bio-based and whether they're non-degradable or industrially degradable. But really, the problem goes beyond that. If we have bio-based plastics, the majority are based on sugar and starch, which are actually food sources, and we also have a world famine problem. So we should really think about using other sources such as bio-based residues that will not take food from anyone, that will not cause a land use change to produce materials such as plastic. And when it comes to degradability, we really need materials that can degrade, that can compose in the environment, therefore not causing plastic pollution. And that is exactly where traceless materials come in play. We developed a material that is designed for nature. Our material, as you can see in this GIF, really composts within a couple of days, leaving no trace, in comparison to a typical starch blend bioplastic on the right side that even after several weeks is still there and still pollutes the environment. So our material is available as a film, a hard plastic, and a coating solution, and therefore apt for a huge array of different applications, because it is designed for the biological circle. So if it ends up in the environment, it becomes an organic nutrient again for new plants, and therefore closing the loop. So our material is 100% compostable in the environment. It is easy to dispose of. So if it ends in any other waste streams, it does not affect their recyclability or treatment. Therefore, we achieve 100% plastic-free environment. By using the residues of the agricultural industry, we avoid the food conflict or the land use change conflict. And by further avoiding any harmful additives or solvents, our materials are actually 100% safe for humans and nature. They're actually edible, don't taste very great, but you could eat them. And they're actually competitive both in quality and price to conventional plastics and bioplastics. So that makes them up for a huge range of applications, mainly those types of applications that easily end up in the environment, either directly or as microplastics, where they cause the big problem that we have with plastic pollution globally. And that is our motivation. We want to have the biggest potential impact on solving the plastic pollution. And in 10 years, we hope to save 300,000 tons of fossil fuels per year, save 600,000 tons of CO2 production by producing in a less in a more environmentally friendly way, save over 1 billion tons of food, and prevent over 250,000 tons of plastic in the environment. And I'm obviously not doing this alone. Just a quick glimpse on the team that we have gathered so far, and we're always looking for more talent interested in supporting us. So if you are interested and want to be part of the solution, not part of the pollution, feel free to reach out to me after this. But first of all, I would like to hear from you. What is your experience with sustainable innovations in times of COVID? How has COVID influenced your startup, your life as an entrepreneur, and your efforts to bring a new sustainable innovation to the market?
Thank you very much, Joanna. Let's see if somebody wants to respond to this question. Let's see from the comments. Somebody's saying, I love how many women you have in your team.
Thank you. We do too. And that is actually one of our KPIs.
Or Lisa is asking, which companies use this plastic alternative already?
So we are quite young startup. We just founded in our startup in September in the mid of COVID. So we are currently only developing first prototypes with first interested customers, but they are big customers from the DAX 30 and Fortune 500.
So you started right in the middle of COVID.
Yes, we did start right in the middle of COVID, but I think the time is now for an alternative to conventional plastics because the awareness is there, both on the consumer side, but also on the industry side, and the current changes in legislation, for example, in the EU, with that new plastic tax coming into place in the next year, almost doubling the price of virgin plastics. The time is now for an alternative solution, both from the consumer side, but also from the environmental side. We really need to get a grip on this problem.
Exactly. You said before that sustainable innovators stand at a crossroad right now. And well, I would like to ask you a bit about what is your advice for somebody who wants to found a sustainable business company, or that is an aspiring sustainable innovator?
I will take your question in regards to COVID, because obviously the same advice that goes for everyone in any time wanting to start a startup obviously also goes. But I think right now, yes, there might be a little bit even more uncertainty than before, but there's also some changes that make it actually, I think, easier to run a startup. There is, for example, the big change in experience with online meetings. So it's much easier to get in contact with investors, for example, that are much more used now to have at least the first couple of meetings in online, which, by the way, makes it much cheaper for you to raise investment because you don't have to travel to see them all. The same goes with finding new talent. I think the talent pool has opened up worldwide for a lot of us now because we work together online anyway, so it doesn't matter as much anymore where you are based, so you can really talent pool globally. Those are some of the changes that I think for innovators, for entrepreneurs, actually make it a little bit easier, maybe even, to start something right now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the situation of COVID has also contributed to increasing awareness on in people's private lives on what's the importance of sustainable solutions?
Absolutely. I think people are a lot more aware both of the plastic that they use these days, for example, by the masks, the gloves, the food delivery, in general, delivery of goods to our homes that we all use more these days. And but also the value of the environment that we have. Now we can find in our homes, we can leave our homes much less than we and much less freely, flexibly as we did before. And I think the value of being outside of the environment really comes to mind again.
Seems like it has made us rediscover some important things that
Absolutely
we had forgotten.
I really think so too. Yeah.
Frederick was asking what was a conscious choice. Do you have policies on that matter?
A conscious choice on what?
I'm not sure what he's referring to. Maybe he can comment.
Elaborate. Yeah, that would be great.
So we can keep this going.
I actually also have a question.
All right.
Please.
So I was just wondering, I mean, it seems very innovative what you're doing. So I was wondering, is there competitors in the market, maybe not here, but maybe on somewhere else in the world?
There's a lot of researchers and young startups trying to solve this problem because it is a huge problem and it really needs a solution. But there is no other startup or no other company out there offering a market-ready material that has the same properties as ours. And we see a lot of challenges in the startups trying to bring a comparable material to the market, because often the base material they use is not as broadly available globally as ours. So the base materials that we use, the residues from starch production right now, so for example, from potato or corn starch, there is a global marketplace for this, which makes it really, or will make it really easy for us to scale up our operations.
Okay, and I guess even if there are competitors somewhere, I mean, the world needs so much plastic, so I feel like
I think there's a lot of space for all of us. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a question from Lisa. She's asking, will you target B2B or B2C market?
So that is a super interesting question. Thank you, Lisa. So we really want to have the maximum impact on the global plastic pollution, and we cannot have that if we focus on one single end consumer product. So in the long term, we want to sell our materials to the plastic converting industry to make all kinds of products out of them. But these products in the majority will be end consumer products, products that you and I can buy in the supermarket, straws that we will get at our favorite cocktail place. So we actually want to establish Traceless as a brand that also the end consumer knows and understands the positive properties and impact that our material has in comparison to conventional plastics and bioplastics.
Great. Thank you very much. Let's see.
Thanks
if
a lot.
As new questions, or I don't know, Robin, do you have any other question?
No question so far. I'm just really excited actually about this startup. I think it's really cool what you guys are doing. And
thanks a lot.
As you said, you're still early in the process, but it seems to have a lot of potential. So I think it's a really cool project to work on.
Thank you. Please feel free to follow us as well on our website. You can sign up for our newsletter, get in touch on LinkedIn. I'm happy to be in contact with everyone who's interested in traceless materials. Thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you so much, Jenny.